Hey, I hope you're having a good day. Today I want to show you some of my process and workflow while I create some hard surface assets. While I do go over materials and lighting, they're more brief, and that's not really the main focus of this video. I also don't go over every single key binding and keyboard shortcut that I press, as this isn't really a beginner tutorial. It's more just sharing my process, and hopefully you can pick up something useful along the way. If you do try to follow this, I'd love to see what you create. So let me know if you do make anything. Without further ado, here's the tutorial. I hope you enjoy. First, let's go over all of the customizations that I've done in Blender, because it's very much not stock Blender. Some of the add-ons I use make it so you can model non-destructively, as you see, which is super important. Being able to go back and make changes, because oftentimes you'll finish an asset and say, oh, well, this needs to change. And rather than redoing a bunch of it, being able to just shift things around is really important. Regardless, let's dive into the customizations I've made in Blender. Obviously, I saved a default startup file. If you didn't know you could do that, definitely do that. I removed all of the objects, and I set the lighting to matte cap instead of studio. I just prefer that. I also turned on statistics. I gave wireframe a shortcut, because being able to toggle wireframe on and off for all objects is super important when you're snapping to another object or just need to preview what you're making clearer. I also got rid of the navigation because I don't need that and never use it, so clearing up the viewport. I also got rid of the timeline because most of what I do is 3D modeling, and just getting a little bit more space is nice in the viewport. Now let's go to the preferences and talk about add-ons that I use. I use a lot of add-ons. The main ones are the machine tools, and Mesh Machine. Those are really useful. The biggest reason I use those add-ons is because of editing in a non-destructive way. With game assets, you use a lot of bevels, but it can be tough because you don't want to commit to the bevel until the last moment, because if you bevel something and then go on and change other stuff in the asset, and then you want to go back and change this bevel, well, you have to just get rid of the bevel and then redo it like this. And this is a simple shape, but sometimes you have, all the time you have really complex shapes, and this is not an option. And so with machine tools, being able to adjust the bevel width is so crucial in game design. Non-destructively edit and make bevels. I don't have to worry about making bevels on an asset with this add-on. It's so much better. I can do crazy stuff like this and block out the asset and then be like, oh, actually, I don't want this huge bevel, or this would look a lot better if it was bigger. Oops, that's not. And fusing, changing a chamfer to a bevel, and then being able to go back and change the width of this bevel is just, if you're not using this add-on and you're a 3D modeler in Blender, then you're kind of just shooting yourself in the foot. Let's go to the next one. UV Packmaster. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a better packing engine for UVs in Blender. That one, as well as Zen UV, has some different unpacking features that are really nice as well. I use both of these extensively. Another useful one is Retopo Flow. That one's really useful for organic shapes. You can quickly retopologize stuff. Quad Remesher is really good for getting a blocked out mesh into the game engine for the programmers. If you're sculpting something, you can just throw this quick remesh on it, it's pretty clean geometry most of the time. It's not going to probably be production ready because you have to really try to manipulate and use as few quads as possible. This isn't the best utilization. You're not just going to get game ready assets from a quad remesh, but in certain scenarios, it can really help. Oh, HDRI rotator is really nice. It just allows you to exactly what it sounds like. I can just rotate it around. This helps with, finding faceting in models. F2, obviously. Oh, and batch operations. This one has saved me tons of time. It's right in the name, batch operations. Okay, so those are most of the add-ons that I use. You don't have to use any of those, but if you see me non-destructively editing bevels, I'm using Mesh Machine. I would highly recommend, out of all of them, getting this one, definitely, if you're doing hard surface modeling. What we're going to be modeling, let me just open up the reference image. We're going to be modeling this old Macintosh computer. I just thought it looked cool. I'm not nostalgic to an old Mac. I've always been a Windows guy and a Linux guy. I have a Mac because developing for Macs requires you to have a Mac, but that's the only reason I have a Mac. I thought it looked interesting, a very, very aesthetically pleasing proportions, and it was an interesting case study for interesting angles and shapes for hard surface modeling. I always save my project prior to doing anything. That's the first thing I do is before I've even modeled, I save the project. Also, make sure to save the project file in versions. I'm going to start with 01 and save that because I will be saving incrementally this whole time. If I'm going to make a big leap forward, I'll save a version. If I'm going to, sometimes I'll just be like, I don't know if this is going to work or if this is going to look good, and I'll just save a version and then make all these crazy changes, and I don't have to worry about messing things up. And if it doesn't work out, or that way of editing the mesh doesn't work, I can just go back and then start over. But I will be saving all the time. So now that we have that out of the way, let's start modeling. Now, normally I would look up the exact dimensions of this product and start with that, but this is just for fun, so we're not going to. We're just going to eyeball it. But starting with a basic size is important. So let's say, I don't know, this is 2 feet tall. Probably isn't quite that big, but we're going to go with 2 feet. So we're going to add in a cube and just start with 2 FT. Okay, I'm going to apply that scale. So this is going to be our imaginary height of the computer. I'm going to set the origin to the bottom. Clearly this is taller than it is wide. So I'm going to eyeball the dimensions here. And I don't think it's quite that deep. Okay, so when I'm breaking down, before we do anything else, in my head, I'm breaking down this simple, it's a simple shape, but it still needs a little bit of planning. You can see the front face comes out. There's a cut at the bottom here that we need to take care of. There's a lot of ways we could do that. There is a inset here for the screen and a rather large chamfer around the front and some smaller bevels on the corners here. So I'm thinking I'm going to take care of the big silhouette first. From the front, I'm going to cut a loop cut here and here. It doesn't have to be exact right now. And just delete those faces and fill that in. I also can see there is a line that goes all the way down like this that we're going to have to create. So let's deal with this. This is going to be the most complicated part, I think, down here. So I'm going to get rid of these edges because I don't need them, and then mirror everything over. I'm going to bevel this here, something like that. Shade this auto smooth. Now that I have this bevel in, I'm going to offset this face. About this much, more or less. Now, this little bevel here, this expands out, but this is around the same diameter right here. So I'm going to bring that in to kind of match. And oops, I'm going to delete that edge because we don't need it right now, and bevel this like that. I want to change this a little bit in. I think this whole bevel actually. Let me just, whoops. Let me just delete all of those and change this bevel. Okay. Now, let's focus on this front face. This big chamfer. I'm going to connect to these sides up. Now, we're gonna do this. We're gonna chamfer it. And then you can see this chamfer goes in a lot farther than this chamfer. It's only a little bit. So I'm just bringing these edges by scaling them out to the outside a little bit more. And I think these are actually a little bit too much. Okay, and then let's, another shortcut that I just reset all of my Blender settings, so I'm still getting everything up to speed again. Go to, this is a must shortcut for me. Go to select loops and then select boundary loops. I always reassign this to Shift B to select the boundary loops, and then I can harden those edges. For visualization's sake, let's just bevel this edge here, about like that. Now you can see this inner bevel is a lot smaller than this outer bevel. So let's bring that in like that. And then match the bottom. Okay. I also think this whole face needs to come back a little bit. There we go. That looks a lot better. And I think the whole thing is a little bit too wide. So make sure to save constantly. Now we can split this to see how that's looking. So let me think. I'm going to, there's several ways I could do this. I'm just going to bevel this for now and Alt S to scale a panel line in, just something quick and easy. For now, I can always remove that later. Now, to get proper proportions, let's add in the screen hole. Inset this face and make a horrible mess, and then clean it up. You can see this is a strange angle. Instead of just being round, it kind of tapers off strange. So I'm bringing this edge in to fix that. So let's inset it about like that. And then I'm going to fix this. And you can see this corner is a really sharp bevel, and this one is a lot larger. So, oops, that's not what I wanted. So that's what I'm looking at here. And then I can bring this back. Nope, not extrude, just grab it straight back. And obviously the screen is curved. So let's tackle the curve next. So to make this, I'm going to snap the cursor to this edge in the center of the screen. And I'm going to actually separate the screen by selection. So I'm going to add in a quad sphere. I'm actually going to up the resolution a little bit, and you can see I'm going to get this curve like this. So I'm just going to scale it down. I want more of an exaggerated curve. Maybe even a little bit more. I'm just going to go kind of stylized with it, I guess, and go even smaller. What I'm looking for is to line up these edges here so that it just barely meets the top. And then I'm going to scale it on the x-axis actually to fit it like an oval to everything, and then apply the scale. And that still isn't enough geometry, so I'm going to add a subsurface modifier, and I'm going to bring this out until it hits the edges like that. Okay, I can hide this for now. Now I want to project this onto that sphere, but this needs a lot more resolution than it is right now. And in fact, I don't particularly need these rounded corners. So to make this easier, I'm just going to delete that and add in a plane and rotate that 90. And now I'm going to take these edges in like this. Yeah. And I'm going to I'm going to subdivide it. Oops, just to get as close as I can to square, and then I can give this a subsurface modifier and do simple just to give it more resolution like this. Now I can bring back the sphere we're going to project this plane onto, and shrink wrap, which I don't know why they have it as a shrink wrap rather than projection. And then just shrink wrap it to that. And I'm going to go with target normal project on the surface. And now I can hide that. And now all I need to do is extend. I'm going to extend this back in, but a trick to do this well is actually to hit G twice and to slide it. And then if you hit C, I don't know why C is the shortcut for that, but you can actually go backwards, but along this plane, and then just cut it back in. Yeah, and I think we're golden there. I actually want more of a curve. Okay, and at this stage, once I get a rough shape in place, which I think this is too large. Once I get a rough model in place, I like to add some materials, because not complicated, just solid colored materials, because it can really help with proportions. Because right now everything's gray, so it's kind of hard to tell. It's just visually, it's clearer if I have colors. For me, at least, it's been helpful. Just give them basic names for now, like screen, and I'm just gonna color pick a color on the screen. And I wish that Blender just automatically changed the viewport color to whatever color you set this to, because I pretty much never want them different. Okay, and then plastic tan. I see there's two tans, so I'm going to do tan, light, and then where's a good neutral? Maybe here. Might be a little bit too bright. Let me see. Yeah, I'm going to choose this one. Up the saturation. Okay. And yeah, that helps a lot, I think. Now I know that this whole computer is rotated. It seems like it's slanted backwards, like it's slightly angled. Everything's slightly angled up a little bit, but it's going to be easiest to model this completely flat. And then one of the last things we can do is rotate everything and then just true up this bottom. I'm going to save that for last. I'm going to get a reference image of the back of this and the top. I don't actually know what model this is. Perfect. I don't know if this is the exact same model, but it is close enough to progress. I want to start with this. It doesn't look like a 45. I'm going to start with this cut here. Let's do that. So I'm going to grab a cube, rotate that 25 degrees. Yeah, something like that. And oops, clear the X rotation, location. And then just cut this, and I'm actually going to bool tool. I want to install the bool tool extension. Okay, and I'm going to Shift Control B, apparently is the shortcut, and I'm going to do brush boolean because that will add a modifier. I don't know why they call it auto versus brush, but regardless, I'm going to cut that. And then I'm going to duplicate this cutter, clear the rotation and scale it down. Oops. And then it's going to line up. Well, I'm going to shift the origin to the bottom and line it up with this. And then it comes in quite a bit, actually. It doesn't look like it, but I think it comes in maybe halfway and then some more, but I'm not going to model this detail because we're going to be viewing it from the front like this angle. And then I'm going to difference that and change it to exact. I'm going to change both of these to exact. And then I'm going to take that in a bit. I'm going to round this, and actually before I round it, I think it's actually a little bit wider at the top. And then I'm going to round it. I'm going to shade this smooth. I think I'm happy with that. I can always change it. Actually, I'm going to bring it in just a little bit. Yeah. I think that's pretty good. Now I'm going to apply both of these booleans. I'm going to make a new collection, just name it backup and hide it because I might want to pull those back. I want to bevel this, but as you can clearly see, it is not wanting to bevel it like I want it to. I'm going to try adding a loop there, and there we go. I'm just going to make sure that these are lined up, and then I'm going to bevel it. And about like that. And then and mirror that over. I think the screen is too small. I think that looks a lot closer than it did before. I think that we can do the floppy disk drive now. I'm just gonna add a cube and roughly make it this shape. It goes a little over halfway, maybe this is exactly halfway. And the bevel, the chamfer, moves into the left half, and then it ends at the same place that this does, the chamfer does. So I'm gonna bring this in halfway. I'm gonna bring this not all the way over. Something like that. I'm going to now add a boolean. Slide this over, because that's going to get in the way of our chamfer otherwise. apply this Boolean and hide the cutters. And now we can actually just remove these faces. Clean up these edges because we are going to bevel. That looks similar. And we can place the cursor there. I'm actually going to just make a face and then separate it. Like that. And now I'm going to fill this, do the same thing, except bring it over. And this is just going to be, I'm going to separate it out for now and put the screen material on it. It's just going to be that dark hole. That's just where the floppy disk goes in. So now we're looking good. Thinking about the details, we have the Apple logo, we have the vents on the bottom and the top. Let's get a better view of these vents. So it looks like they're just cutouts into the top with a little brim. So this is going to be very easy to make. Let's just place the cursor in the center of that. Oh. Like that. And bevel the edges now before we cut. Slice. I'm going to save incrementally because I can always get back by just mirroring this clean side over to the side I'm working on. But if I ever mirror and I forget and then I continue on, it would be pretty easy to get this back. It's just a flat plane. I could just delete this and fill in the face, but just to be on the safe side. And now I'm going to add in the slats. I'm just going to add in a cube. I'm not going to round these. They're just going to be cubes. I'm going to throw an array modifier on there for now. Okay, I'm gonna try this spacing. What is this? 38. They're obviously larger than they are in real life, but I think they're going to be more readable if they're a little bit larger and not as much just noise. Control-Shift-B, brush Boolean, difference. And now to really see what they're going to look like, I'm going to give this a bevel. Okay. That looks good. I think they're too thick though. And let's make this a thinner gap. Yeah, I like that a lot better. I'm going to save. And I'm going to mirror the geometry over. And I'm going to mirror the vents over. And there we go. With the keyboard, it's going to be the exact same process as the computer monitor part. It's just going to be starting off with a cube. And really, in order to get a feel for the scale of this thing, I need to get the keys placed. And the keys are going to be fairly simple because we're going to use an array modifier. So let's add in a cube. Let's go with 14. So there needs to be 7 on each side. So instead of just taking an array modifier and taking 14 out like that, I want this to be centered exactly. So what I'm going to do is move this out to the right side and make that a 7 count. And then I'm going to mirror this across the keyboard axis. And you can see now it is symmetrical. So I can, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So for scale, I'm going to say 2 keys. This distance here is roughly the same distance as 2 keys. So in my 3D scene, I need to make sure that that is the case. And indeed, it is roughly that size. So I'm going to say these are going to be the size of our keys, and I'm going to make them a little bit shaped a little bit more like keys. I'm going to scale down the top, bring them down a little bit. And I'm going to select all of these, hit Control L and link object data. This looks symmetrical. So there's the same distance here and here on the keyboard. So what I'm going to do is make sure that it's symmetrical. I'm going to place a cut in the middle, just temporarily, to position the origin right in the middle of the keys. Then I can mirror the geometry around that origin. So now I know that there's the same distance on each side of all of the keys. I'm going to add the colors. I'm going to make a new plastic gray. I think there's only one gray on this, so. And I'm going to sample this right here. Okay, obviously our keys do not look like the reference because there's like 10 space bars as tiny little keys. But I'm also realizing that there are gaps in between our keys, and there are not, other than a millimeter or something, gap in the reference. So we need to fix that. I'm going to move all of these closer and kind of position it like it is in the reference. Instead of having an array modifier like it is right now, I want each key to be an instanced object. We'll only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of keys. I found an easy way when you have a bunch of duplicates like this and you want to I just want to make an instance on every single array. I wish that there was a way to apply the array modifier as instances, and I don't think that there is a way to do that. So in order to do this easily, I just want to apply all of the modifiers, and I think we're still, these are all still instanced. I'm gonna go to Object, Relations, Make Single User, Object, and Data. Now each one of these is their own object, but I'm gonna go into, select all of them, go into Edit Mode, and separate by loose parts. Now we have, all of these keys are individual objects. So I'm going to select all of them, and set the origin to the geometry. So now they all have their origins in the same spot. Now I can just hit Control L and link object data. Now we have all of these keys separate into their own objects, but they're all instances of each other. Okay, we're gonna go with that, and we can always change it as we go along. Now let's finish the other key types. So it looks like we have the tab key, the caps lock, and the shift key, which will be, the tab key will be used for the backspace because those look like they're the same size. The caps lock and the return key are the same, and then the shifts are the same. I think that the command key and the enter key are the same, but you can see these kind of bow out a little bit, and these all have a concavity to them. So these are going to be the same. We can use this key to make this key, but we will have to make this a separate key to get this. Actually, this whole bottom row, they are bowed out ever so slightly. We won't worry about that until we're done positioning and refining the key shapes. But then we will, that'll be the last step, is changing these all a little bit. Before I duplicate these around, I want to get this concavity to the keys. The way I'm going to do that, and the roundedness, each corner is rounded. I want to make this easy to change in the future. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add a loop cut in the middle, and I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to add 2 bevel modifiers. I'm going to actually cut this again, just to help control the bevels. You'll see. I'm going to add a Control G and assign this to a new group, and then I'm going to assign each edge, each corner, to a new group as well. And now we should be able to complete this with a bevel modifier, and we're going to, instead of angle, we're going to do vertex group, and we're going to select the first group that we made. So this is going to bevel the middle part, which is exactly what we want. So now we can control, so now we have the concavity here, concavity, and it's really easy to edit this now because all we have to do is select these 2 edges, and we can change how much this is going to be beveled, something like that. And then we can add a second bevel modifier, and we're going to do vertex group again and select the second vertex group, and slowly bring that up. We're going to put the second bevel that controls the corners here first. And now we have the shape of the key. We don't need the bottom faces at all. They're not visible. And I don't love the shape of this. So I'm going to, I'm still in local view. Yep. I think they're taller than I made them. Something like that. One more bevel at the end. Just for the top, we're going to do a bevel of 60 degrees and just a tiny amount, and then we're going to go to shading and harden normals on this last bevel. And now that pretty well represents the key, and we can tweak all of these as needed. I think it needs to be even taller still, or maybe not as big of a scale factor from the bottom to the top. Maybe both. Okay, now we need to select all of the keys with the one that we applied all of the modifiers to, being the active object. And we can just hit Control L and copy modifiers. And boom, all of our keys have the proper bevels applied to them. One thing I'm going to do is object relation, make this a single user. I think this is two. Yep. So all of these are, and I'm going to bevel them out, but they're beveled the opposite direction. So instead of just taking, we can't just, take these vertices and bevel them up, because they're actually beveled this way and then they're flat along the sides, if that makes sense. Well, we can just bring these up, and we need to take these edges and push them up a little bit, but those aren't included in the bevel, so we don't need a bevel here anymore. We can go to the vertex groups, the second group, which we probably should have named, and or was it the first? Remove. Yeah, it was the first. Does alt clicking not work? Okay, well, I guess we're gonna have to go into each one and remove it. And then we can add, select this one and assign. Obviously, we're gonna have to adjust the quantities. This one's probably fine. This one was too much, and it's too many. This is too many as well. And this one is way too many and too much. What are these? 3? Yeah, it only needs to be the same as the others. So, bam, and now we got the concave and the convex. Cool. Keyboard modeling is done. Now we're looking like a computer. Okay, let's move on to the mouse. The mouse is the exact same thing as we've done before. It basically looks like the keyboard. In fact, if we duplicate the keyboard, clear the rotation, and adjust the size, I bet we could get a mouse real quick. I think it's a little more rounded. The bottom, it is asymmetrical. This, I keep hiding it. This is a lot lower. I think it's the same height as the keyboard though. That's funny. That's pretty much it right there. And then a little button at the front. That was so easy to make. This looks so uncomfortable to use this mouse. And there we go. That is pretty much all of the modeling done. Now that we're finished, I do want to get this a few degrees of tilt on this whole thing. So in order to do that, I'm going to save incrementally save. I'm going to parent this, which is absolutely ridiculous. We don't need all of this geometry. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to just delete all of that. I'm just going to parent that to the screen. Control P, parent. Let's see, I'm going to parent. Yeah, that moves. That moves with it. So I'm going to parent the vents. I'm going to move that to the backup layer, cutters to the backup layer. And now I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to pivot it from the front. So I'm going to put the cursor where I want to pivot. I'm going to turn the pivot point to the cursor, and I'm going to pivot it a certain amount so I can always return it to the original. I'm going to go with 5 degrees. I'm going to save this. Now, let's just add a plane to match the look, kind of. I'm going to extrude that up and add a bevel modifier with a big offset and a bunch of cuts and smooth it. We're getting there. We need to add these vents now. Now we can start on the lighting. First, let's place the camera. Let's even go with this weird aspect ratio to make it look older. So let's add a camera. We were kind of going around 90 millimeters. Let's check depth of field and then just select the screen. The camera, we're going to hit Control-Alt-0 to not position it where we were looking. Let's see. I'm just gonna camera to view, and I'm also going to change this. Let's do like, what is this? What is this image? Yeah, let's just copy that. 2400 by 1970. That is a weird aspect ratio, but let's do it. All I'm looking for, around something like this. Yeah. Something like that. I'm gonna turn camera to view off. So I'm gonna add in our key light. Whoa, this is huge. Let's scale that down. So let's add in a area light and go to rendered view. And we're gonna be using cycles. Oh, and the GPU, we're gonna use the GPU definitely. Believe the angle is kind of like this, and this roughness is going way down. I'm also going to bring some metallic into it. Not that this is a realistic shader, but you can see it gets some of the banding that we're seeing on the screen. And I'm also going to go to the clear coat and turn that all the way up. What is that? Okay, it just wasn't shaded smooth. I don't know. This light needs to not be quite as soft. So is that just a matter of scale? Yeah. And it needs to be more on top. Let me render that view. I'm looking at this shadow that this is casting. And yeah, I guess we need to pull this screen farther back into the computer. Let's bring back. Okay, well, first let's clean up this outliner a little bit. let's take all of these keys and parent them to the keyboard. And then let's rename it to keyboard. Oh, this is empty. Oh yeah. I don't think that probably goes there. It probably goes back here, but that's fine. Let's rename the mouse. And that's probably fine. Now, let's bring it back up. And let's take, let's see, the screen and this on the local axis, back. And all I'm looking for is to match this shadow right here. So that's a lot better, like that. And and now I need to bring this back. I don't know if that's perfect, but that definitely looks closer. And I'm going to brighten this. I'm going to bring this key light in. I also don't want this to spread quite as much. So I'm going to take the spread down. Now that's going to make it maybe like 130 degrees. That's going to make it a lot brighter, more concentrated. So I'm going to bring the power down. I'm going to take the world color down. I'm going to duplicate this, point it at the PC. I'm going to pull this in. I can see this like edge of the table right here. That's what I'm going for right here. So I'm going to pull this in to maybe that. What I really like is to view one light at a time. In fact, let's make a whole new collection and call it lights. And those are there. Let's label this key, rim. The camera is using a wider field of view. And it's in the scene more, like this. That feels a lot better. Let's do a test render and do a little bit of color correction. Actually, for the test render, let's... I noticed in looking at more reference images, I think the back of the Mac, which rhymes, is vertical, even though this is tilted. So let's correct that. For the test render, let's do a sample of 256. Let's just go with that. Something quick. There we go. That looks good. Now let's do some color grading in the composition. Use nodes. And then what is this, like V? Oh yeah, V to zoom out, which, why is that it? Let's see. I want to add in contrast first off. A brightness and contrast node. Let's up the contrast to like 1.2. Mute. Yes. There we go. That looks a lot better. Let's look at this rendered one more time. Let's turn on the compositor here. And I'm going to brighten this up. Just a little bit. I'm actually going to turn the roughness up on the screen because I have the clear coat. I hope that you picked up some useful workflow methods or tools that I use, that you could see some of my problem solving process in Blender and how it's really flexible. Building a workflow that's really flexible is important. If you have any questions or if you want me to clarify some things, feel free to ask. I'll try to respond to as much as I can. And also, if you want a more in-depth technical tutorial on modeling assets and specifically how I have add-ons and Blender set up, a lot more key bindings and stuff, then just let me know.